Hey gang, welcome to the Wilson Combat Channel, or welcome back as the case may be. We're at the Circle WC Ranch, Bill Wilson's place in Texas. My name is Massad Ayoob. I'm one of the regular presenters here, and because I still work a good bit in the criminal justice system, I've been asked to comment on what some of our viewers and commentators have asked for comments on, the outcome of the Kyle Rittenhouse case in Kenosha, Wisconsin. You'll recall that Kyle was the then 17-year-old kid who went up to Kenosha about 20-30 minutes from his home in Illinois to assist in the cleanup efforts and the security efforts in the rioting there that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake. Now, if you look back, the rioting itself was totally unjustified. Jacob Blake, clearly in the iPhone videos that triggered all the controversy, was holding a knife the entire time police chased him and tried to keep him from getting into a car that was not his and driving off with two children he had no right to drive off in. That knife was in his hand when the police officer shot him 7 times. The officer was in close proximity and in great danger of being stabbed. What should have been a headline, "Black Children Rescued from Knife-Wielding Kidnapper," became cross-racial, racially motivated shooting of a man shot 7 times in the back while he was unarmed. The city erupted into flames. Kyle Rittenhouse, who was carrying an AR-15 rifle exposed in the streets, wound up shooting 3 men, shooting at a 4th, and killing 2 of the men that he shot. He was charged with murder and the multiple lesser-included offenses. There are still people asking why he was acquitted. Well, let's go back and look. And anyone who really wants to know, if you follow that trial, which was archived on court TV, and see what the jury saw, you'll understand why he was acquitted. They said, 17-year-old kid in the streets with a rifle, it's illegal, right in and of itself, therefore everything he did was wrong. Andrew Branca, the commentator and attorney at lawofselfdefense.com, was the first to point out that a strict reading of the minutiae of Wisconsin law said the kid, under the circumstances, was legal, and the judge agreed. If you're legal, you're okay. Now, was it smart to walk around in the streets with an AR-15 to go where you know there's trouble? No, of course not. But a lot of people on our side in the gun world said, boy, the kid went someplace that it was stupid to go, it's all his fault. I can't say it's all his fault. It was the nature of the circumstances. The police officers who were there themselves testified more of the people in the streets that riot-torn night were armed than were not. It was a classic example of what's called in Wisconsin Doctrine of Necessity. You're allowed to break the law or to break convention in a situation where following the law would cause more human injury than breaking it. When everyone else is armed, and many of them are hostile to you, who's trying to clean things up, being armed might turn out to be a good idea. The kid had paid for a friend of his who was 18 to buy the rifle with the plan that when he himself, Rittenhouse, turned 18, he would take possession of it. And properly done through an FFL dealer, that would have been totally legal. It was not a straw man purchase per se. And that's why Rittenhouse was clear on that. Was it smart to walk around with the gun? The jury forgave him for it because of the nature of the circumstances, the exigent circumstance. Did he go out there looking to shoot people? No, video showed him cleaning up graffiti, which he had been doing before. But when he found himself literally in something close to a war zone, I, for one, can understand why he armed himself with the only gun that was available to him. Now, if you look at the sequential 4 shootings, each of them caught on video, and the video is really what saved the kid. The testimony of the medical examiner was that when he shot the first man, an extremely violent man, a convicted pedophile, who had just been released from a mental hold at the hospital because he had expressed suicidal intention. Bear in mind, suicide is interdirected homicide, and that man's behavior and threats that night clearly showed the man was homicidal. The evidence showed he was grabbing Rittenhouse's gun, clearly not with benevolent intent, when he was shot. and that is what cleared him on that count of murder. The kid ran, people followed him. They were screaming, get him, get him. There were even people screaming, shoot him. Now bear in mind, one of the rioters had fired a gunshot moments before Rittenhouse first opened fire on the man trying to disarm him. As he flees, he's struck in the head with a skateboard. If you look at a skateboard, the sectional density of that hard, heavy wood with metal attachments, it's like being hit in the head with an axe handle, but a magnum version. He's stunned, he goes down, another man does a flying kick at him. He fires 2 shots at that man, misses. The man keeps going, and Rittenhouse ceases fire. The man who is coming at him with a skateboard, he shoots in the chest, and that wound is mortal. The man staggers away. The last man who's going to be shot runs up to him with a loaded, chambered Glock 27 .40 caliber in his hand. And if you look at the video, is literally bringing it down to point at Rittenhouse's head. When Rittenhouse fires the shot, that explodes the bicep. But as that man testified, vaporized my bicep. He turns and runs away screaming for a medic. Rittenhouse tries to run toward the police. You see on the video his hands are raised. The police tell him, get out of the street. He leaves and later turns himself in. And that totality of the circumstances is what got him past the usual guilt-inducing element of flight equals guilt. I thought his attorneys did an excellent job of breaking that case down, of breaking down the witnesses against him, and of explaining step by step, shot by shot, that every time that kid pulled the trigger, he was justified. It's very important that each time he ceased fire as soon as the threat against him had ceased, as soon as the first man grabbing the gun fell. When the man who tried to kick him in the head ran and kept going, the kid ceased fire. When he fired the single shot at the skateboard guy and that man turned and staggered away, Rittenhouse ceased fire. When he shot the man pointing the pistol at him and that man turned and ran, he ceased fire. And one important lesson from this is knowing when to stop shooting is every bit as critical as knowing when to start. We saw a whole lot of BS in that trial as far as the guns. Something we've seen for years, the demonization of the AR-15 rifle and the corollary demonization of the person who owns it. And we have another YouTube video on archive that explains the rationale and detail of the use of the AR-15 in self-defense, and I would refer you to that. You saw the attorney pick up the AR-15 in court, swing it around, and point it at everyone. I've seen that before. It's a cheap shyster trick. The prosecutor or plaintiff's lawyer will always do that, pretending to be the defendant. So he's trying to psychologically terrorize the jury while he is in the role of the defendant. It didn't work there, thank goodness, and generally doesn't work, but it's something for you to watch out for. They accused him, because he had full metal jacket ammunition in the rifle, of reckless, wanton disregard for human life, because such bullets could go through and through anyone he shot and endanger other bystanders. Well, it turns out none of them did. No harm, no foul, and that was not lost on the jury. The kid's answer should have been, when asked, why did you have that ammunition? It was the only ammunition available to him, just as that AR-15 was the only firearm available to him when he found himself in something that was certainly no longer a gun-free zone. One of the few things the kid did wrong, he had some first aid training, he was carrying a first aid kit, and he did in fact apply some first aid to some of the rioters who had been injured that night. He did not, however, have his EMT certificate, emergency medical technician. At some point that night, he had told someone that he did, probably just to reassure them and give them more confidence that he was competent to treat them. He handled that wisely, and he admitted to that falsehood in court. Never try to make things look better than they are. When you admit, yeah, I did this one thing wrong, the jury is thinking, okay, he said something that hurt himself. He admitted that even though it hurt him. That tells me I can believe him about the other things that help him. So the kid handled that part right. Should he have gone at all? It's like saying, well, someone volunteered to rush into a burning building to rescue someone. and got burned. Was it foolish to do that knowing they might have been killed? Well, one man's foolishness is another man's courage and commitment. And I leave that to your personal ethics and morality to look at. In the end, would it have been wiser for him to stay away? Absolutely. And I'll close this with a point that I always seem to make. We quote great masters of tactics like Jeff Cooper and others here. I'm going to quote a poet and humorist from the old days, Ogden Nash. He said, when called by a panther, don't anther. And hopefully a lot of people will learn from Rittenhouse's ordeal that it might be the wisest thing to stay away from such conflagrations as much as you think it's righteous to go in and help. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to invite your comments. All of us learn from each other. There's a commentary section at the end of every Wilson Combat video, and I hope you'll share your thoughts there. Until then, I'll see you next time.